If you were to rebuild StaysCo all over again, would you do it the same way or would you do anything differently?
I would do definitely a lot differently. I think we could rebuild StaysCo how it is now much faster without doing that many mistakes and wasting time and money actually on certain resources to start up much faster by knowing just now how to hire, how to evaluate certain decisions that we took in the past regarding development of the platform, when to stop a development of the platform and start selling earlier without focusing too much on the product. So these kind of typical entrepreneur mistakes that you do when building a startup.
Hi everyone, welcome. Today we are taking a sneak peek at StaysCo, which is a Luxembourg-based startup on a mission to make relocation easy, comfortable, and stress-free. And I have two co-founders as my guests today, João Mesquita, the CEO, and Alec Hilbert, the Chief Growth Officer at StaysCo. João and Alec, it's great to have you on the Inside Story podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. Happy to be here for sure.
To briefly tell to our listeners a bit about StaysCo to get them up to speed, you were part of and graduated from Fit for Startup Accelerator program here in Luxembourg and incorporated just very recently in 2023. And you focus on B2B sales, where you work both with multinational companies wanting to relocate their staff and relocation agencies that are usually hired by these multinational companies. And great thing about your platform is that you also have a network of property managers who are either individuals or companies managing apartment rentals in Luxembourg. These are vetted and compliant properties. Despite being new in the market, you already have paying clients, which is great. Kudos to you and well done.
Thank you
very much.
Let's start off the conversation with, if you can take us back to the beginning. How did you come up with the idea to build StaysCo and why was it important to build it in the first place?
Yeah, so before we built, I was actually working in a different company in Luxembourg, which was a property management company. And we were managing back then a lot of apartments in Luxembourg and publishing them on various platforms, but also working with very big companies in Luxembourg. In that company, I managed to see quite a bit how old-fashioned the process is when companies go and look for housing options, no matter if it's short or extended. So that presented a very clear opportunity in the market, which afterwards led me to decide to quit the company and start StaysCo together with Alec to work on that issue and basically help companies streamline finding temporary housing options for their relocating employees and just make the whole system and process much simpler and easier by just centralizing a lot of housing providers in Luxembourg.
And I think this is a very important issue in Luxembourg. I am somewhat new, have been living in Luxembourg for a bit over a year. And from what I can gather, property is a major challenge. There's lack of housing in Luxembourg. And I think the fact that you guys are working on building a company that would hopefully simplify the process of finding apartments, right? As an expat myself, I can relate to the pain and the frustration. Here you go. I am frustrated with apartment search. And you started working on the idea back in February, March of 2022. And only after 6 months, you joined the Startup Accelerator program, Fit for Start. For those of you who are not familiar, it's one of the prestigious programs sponsored by the Luxembourgish government to support startups. Can you walk us through that journey? At the time, all you had was an idea. You didn't know if it would work and you didn't even know how to make it work. What specific steps did you take to build your first minimum viable product or MVP and successfully pitch and be selected for Fit for Start, which is a pretty competitive program?
So first of all, as you mentioned at the beginning, was just an idea, like let's say a raw diamond, which needs to be molded in a way. So we basically started out with understanding a bit more the market itself. So we did a lot of market research to explore and see how big is the market, is an interest, especially now, for example, Luxembourg, since Luxembourg is pretty small. We need to understand how is the industry set up here in Luxembourg, and is it something which we can focus on, particular for Luxembourg itself. So that was the first steps, to kind of take all those puzzles together and then basically finalize this whole puzzle in one piece in a way. And then, of course, as already indicated, to be part of this Fit for Start program, you need to create kind of an MVP. And luckily, we were in a position where we raised funds. Typical approach, the 3 Fs, so family, foods, and friends. Those was kind of the kickstart for us to kind of have the resources together to create the MVP itself, to afterwards apply for the Fit for Start program. When it comes to the MVP itself, we can also elaborate this a bit more. I think, Joao, if you want, you can take care of this part.
Yeah, so when it comes to MVP, actually, we just started in two steps. What we did is we started with designs and then started building a very, very simple platform that could just showcase in a very simple way what we are trying to build, and that was our MVP at the beginning.
And did you test this MVP before you even applied, or what was the process for you to test and see if it works, if your idea even has a potential?
When it comes to testing the MVP, that was actually one of the mistakes that we did as entrepreneurs, because I came from a background in the market. We thought too fast and relied too much just on what we have seen, or I have seen from working in a different company, and hence why we actually didn't test too much and we didn't get too much feedback before building it, and we were focused too much on building it and then trying to sell it, which was one of the biggest points that we learned right away from the first meetings with our coaches, that we had to change and switch our mindset from selling to actually still doing customer discovery and still going much more in detail to understand the whole process and to understand what we need to build specifically before we even think about hardcore selling the product, I would say.
Exactly. It is very fundamental, right, to your point, to understand different stakeholders, because in your case, I think you work with multiple stakeholders, and getting their input early on can be very crucial and can save a lot of time and energy.
If I can add something to this. So for us, why we actually did this mistake was mainly because we analyzed our competition pretty well. So we exactly knew all the players in the industry, and therefore we focused ourselves a bit how they are taking care of, how they're operating, how they are set up, how do their dashboard looks like. And that was kind of well, Joao has there an interesting quote, which we were always laughing about it, but it's kind of good artists copy and the best artists they steal. And therefore we kind of did this approach, and that's why we kind of didn't explore too much our own MVP and to get it validated, especially in Luxembourg.
Did you copy or did you steal?
I would say more copy. I think stealing is now maybe the wrong term, but let's say we analyze our competition very precisely, and therefore we had kind of this, we knew there is a need for it, and we knew they make a lot of money with their approach, so there might be something they are doing right.
This is also at the same time was a blessing, but also not a blessing, because it led us to focus a lot on the product, because at the same time I had the opportunity to work directly as a partner with some of the competition. So obviously you see some stuff, but then this also, and you understand the opportunity, but at the same time you tend to focus potentially too much on the product because you have seen some stuff before actually validating any of your own product. So yeah, that was for us a little bit the challenge right away from the beginning.
So help us understand then, what is your business model? How does StaysCo generate revenue?
StaysCo basically regroups a bunch of housing providers in Luxembourg and has a big inventory that is presented to the company And whenever a company decides to book an apartment, we basically get a cut from that reservation.
So you are subscription-based model.
More like a commission-based model, but we are exploring as well when it comes to the subscription-based model right now.
And help us then understand, is the platform also accessible to people like me who are searching for apartments, or only companies can access the platform?
So far, we are only accessible for the B2B part. So it means only our partners get access to our inventory. However, we are right now in the process of also making it open for the B2C. So that means individuals can go on our website, can use a search bar and explore what kind of accommodation options are available or nearby to their offices, and then from there on they can either book it or request it.
And I think from what I remember from our earlier conversations, it's not just the platform you provide where, let's say, the expats from multinational companies who want to relocate, they can go and search and then book. But there's also a lot of kind of one-to-one interaction, if I'm not mistaken, right? So if maybe staff of the company can go and look for property, and then you actually provide, I think, more of a support throughout the process. Is that correct?
So essentially, how it works is that actually the company reaches out to us usually, and then we do the whole service for them. So we go through the hassle of using our platform and understanding what is available on the market for the specific requests, especially if they have pets or specific dates, specific requirements, location requirements. We go through the hassle, we search for the available properties, and we present those available properties to the client itself. But it's usually not that they search by themselves. It's actually a done for you a service so that they can just write us an email or use the platform in case we already work for some time together, and then just submit their details and we send an offer back with the right apartments that best suit their request, basically.
I see. So as you were describing, something that came to my mind is, as I see it, then would it be accurate to describe you as tech empowered service company? Because it looks like there's a lot of the service component too, right? A lot of interaction with the people, which is great. I think it's always nice to have a human on the other end helping you pick your new home.
This is an interesting question because that's something we have been working on ourselves, because we are a tech company from the foundation onwards. But the problem is that our market is in some ways not always already up to date with already to use certain technologies. So we need to facilitate it with using like personal service and being some kind of a company that is tech enabled with service. However, we strive from the beginning on actually to be just a tech company, and we did pivot a little bit because it just suited better the companies. Because in general, the real tech that we have and work on are actually the APIs that we haven't mentioned. But essentially, when you have a housing provider, the housing provider is storing all their details regarding their properties somewhere. They have a heart where they manage their availabilities, their images, and all the stuff around the apartments. And those systems, we actually have connections with some of the world leading systems, actually one market leader in the US and one market leader in Europe that is being used by many providers. So our technology actually allows us to get access to many, many housing providers, even outside of Luxembourg, if we want to.
And is that then potentially an intention from your side to eventually expand and go beyond Luxembourg? Because obviously Luxembourg is pretty small market.
So of course the end goal of the whole journey is for sure not only staying in Luxembourg. That's why we also decided to build those APIs, because therefore we get access to many housing providers outside of Luxembourg. But first of all, before we go this direction, we want to still become bigger here in Luxembourg, having a bigger market share before trying to explore other markets, because then we have a kind of a foundation and we have like I would say more peace of mind, because we know we have the resources and the time to really focus heavily on new markets, because going into new markets instantly attached to a lot of time investment and resources.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, that would be great to have StaysCo not only operate in Luxembourg, but also outside, right? And I think Luxembourg is a great launch pad in a way because it attracts so many international companies and requires a lot of relocation services. And to your point, I guess it can provide playing field to test things on a much smaller scale. Let's talk now about funding. Alec briefly mentioned that you have managed to fool some friends and family in the beginning to invest around 35,000 euros in your idea so you could build your minimum viable product, your initial product. And you also got another 50K from Fit for Start program as a participant, but you decided not to raise anymore. So for the most part, you have been actually bootstrapping your company. What has led you to make this decision to not to raise?
So the decision was pretty simple. So we were pivoting constantly between going outside of Luxembourg or not going outside of Luxembourg, because like you mentioned, we are tech enabled, and technology we have today actually allows us to go outside of Luxembourg already today. And we were, to be honest, it's not like we just said, yeah, we will stay in Luxembourg from the beginning on. To be honest, we were trying to go outside of Luxembourg. We had very big partnerships outside of Luxembourg with very big housing providers, much bigger than the ones that are currently operating in Luxembourg with thousands and thousands of properties. However, we noticed that the effort it requires for us to go into another country, even though our technology enables it, was very high. Like Alec was mentioning, it's directly tied to a lot of resources and a lot of time investment. And this kind of time investment that we were doing to go outside of Luxembourg was not directly tied to the same return on investment than we were seeing in Luxembourg. So at some point, as we also all know as entrepreneurs, when it comes to raising, this is also another time investment. So at the same time, we were building traction outside of Luxembourg, and at the same time, we were focusing on catching investors and see if we can raise money to make this whole process even faster. So this, all in all, at the end of the day, almost took all of our effort, even though we were already making money. So 90% of our time was being invested in something that was not even generating the same amount or more money than we were doing what we were doing in Luxembourg already. So at some point we decided to take a step back, and it's always nice to say that you raise money as a startup or company, but for us, our company was working, so we decided together to just keep it for now as a lean company that works, that can pay its bills, and that keeps scaling in a market where it already built a base. And from there, we have other opportunities to explore at a later stage, the more solid the foundation becomes. So at the later stage, we either sell our company to a competitor, or we would still be able to fundraise and grow in other countries. So that's why we decided against. And to be honest, it was a back and forth decision. So we were in the mindset to raise, then not to raise, then to raise again. And now we said we won't raise for sure, for now at least.
Indeed, I mean, it must be a challenging decision, right? Because I think it is very tempting to go after, let's call it easy money, although it's not easy, right? To get, to raise funds is a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, time, and commitment. And I tend to think that if you are able to build your company with your own resources, especially that you started making some revenue, then I think that's the better approach to build something solid that you can then raise if you want to scale operations maybe internationally, right? And you would get also better valuation on your company. You can get better deal with the investors if you have already put something solid together. So yeah, kudos to you for building lean startup. And on the topic of money, some people, I think, enter entrepreneurship to make money, right? And if they are successful, they can make a lot of money. But oftentimes, at least at the beginning, it requires a lot of money from you to invest, right? And I think it requires a lot of money, as in your case, raising from family and friends or from others. But in your case, although your company already has paying clients and you started making revenue, you two are not paying yourselves. You do pay the freelancers you work with, but you have not been paid a penny from what I know. So how is it like to work on your company and not being paid? How has this decision impacted, if at all, your motivation and commitment to work on your business?
So that's actually a good question. So first of all, there are multiple reasons why we are not paying ourselves. One of the biggest one is mainly because, first of all, we want to allocate the money properly into the company itself instead of ourselves. So of course, yeah, if you pay yourself, it gives you kind of this boost. But since we've have this long-term vision and we are not chasing this short-term gratification away with the salary, for us, it's very important to allocate the money properly so we can afterwards benefit more from it than just now paying ourselves a salary. And then, of course, as already indicated before, I think as a first-time founder, in a way, you do a lot of error, like things not how you maybe should do. And one of those things were also how we were managing the money. So again, we made mistakes. We invested money, maybe not how we should have done it. But again, those are like mistakes you learn from it, and therefore you need to, you need to learn out of this, out of those kind of situations. And this is also an end product of it. So for ourselves, we can happily say that we are now not only chasing like a payroll in a way, but for us, the long-term goal is more important for us, and we are convinced that if we keep this ongoing on the later stage, it will pay off.
Indeed, I think that's a great idea to keep growing the pie, right? So you can get a bit of piece in the future, bigger piece.
Exactly. Sometimes you need to be a bit patient. Patience is something very important, and therefore a lot of entrepreneurs, they quit after the first 1 or 2 years because they might not see directly the results. But that's exactly where we kind of, I would not say now stand out, but yeah, it's not maybe the best situation that you don't have a salary, but we stick to the resilience and we know why we are doing it, and therefore we don't give up like that easily.
That's great to hear. Consistency, perseverance are, I think, crucial when you are trying to build something ground up. So well
Exactly.
done. Yeah.
I think maybe this will be in there as well. It ties again back to the scaling and growing outside of Luxembourg as well. I think that was one of the biggest reasons, because we were funneling the money that we otherwise could have put in our pocket. We decided actually to put everything into further developing those big APIs, those 2 big agreements that we got, and keep building. And as we know, sometimes developers are quite expensive. Developing a platform is quite expensive. So we decided to basically make use of the funds that we had at hand and just funnel it all back into the company, because we were in that mindset that we need to grow fast outside of Luxembourg, which now pivoted again a little bit. That's why I was saying we pivoted constantly before, back and forth from raising, not raising. But in the mindset of raising, this was at that point in time the right thing to do. So we were following everything to catch traction, build the tech, raise money, go outside of Luxembourg. And now we decided against it and to cut all the unnecessary expenses and go back and take a step back and just continue to bootstrap. However, this time bootstrap with no unnecessary costs and no unnecessary expenses, basically.
Interesting. I wish it was that easy to identify what cost is necessary versus unnecessary, right? I think it's very difficult, especially in the early days of the business. You touched upon, though, a very interesting topic that I wanted to address: pivots, right? Or also we can say changes, right? Many startups go through pivots, which means fundamentally changing the direction or the focus of the company. At StaysCo, you've already mentioned a couple of the pivots, right? To raise, not to raise, go abroad versus stay in Luxembourg. Were there any other significant pivots you had to do? And what factors influenced your decision to change the course of the business?
I think, yes, there were definitely more than that pivot, to be honest. I think we have had a lot of external influence as well on the startup itself. I mean, which is not a bad thing, but we went through Fit for Start, so we had various different coaches. Then we had another program which was directly tied to our office as well, which then we meet new and new people, new opinions, and also from pitching, getting feedback to our pitches and stuff like this. So you have basically a lot of external influence and a lot of external opinions, and then it comes down to actually deciding what is right or wrong for yourself, because ultimately I think you should always listen to people that have done what you are trying to achieve, but at some point you also gotta just focus on your own goals and also see how directly this ties into the company. So to be specific, when it comes to our pivots, we have pivots when it comes to fundraising. So fundraising, not fundraising. And then we have pivots as well when it comes to business model. Because a lot of opinions, and we are still exploring some of the stuff, to be honest. So we started with the commission. We are still in the commission model, slowly introducing a subscription model, but that was also heavily a lot of opinions that always said we should very early on switch to subscription models. And these were just in general pivots or things that we were constantly considering. And in general, also the business model. Like I was saying, this is a little bit of a more complicated topic to just summarize in 2 minutes, but it goes heavily into the tech or completely tech startup and then fundraising or being a serviced tech enabled startup or company. And this is the biggest pivot we have done because we have two opportunities. We can be a tech startup where we utilize our APIs and we become nothing else than a very big API network provider that could connect to other companies that need to use access to thousands and thousands of property and data, and then they have their own clients that they serve some kind of service. And we are a typical tech startup. We can fundraise, we can extremely fast scale, or we have the other option that we started with, and that's also how we bootstrapped, because that's how the only option we had to bootstrap the company, because at the beginning we did not have this tech, so we had to figure out how do we make money. So we had to become this tech enabled company that uses the tech, does the service as well where it does not have tech yet, and generates money to funnel everything into the tech to then become the tech startup in a way. So if this was basically the pivot. It's a very complicated explanation. I would probably still need to go back and simplify the whole explanation, but I would say the biggest pivot is between the tech service enabled company or just the tech enabled company.
Mm. These are tough decisions. And to your point, there are a lot of diverging opinions, right? I recently mentored with the University of Luxembourg. They have this entrepreneurship program and they had different teams. It was a competition and there were diverse mentors, right? With wealth of knowledge and experience. And even within my team, we were two mentors and our opinions didn't match most of the time, right? And so I feel so bad for startup founders who have to listen to diverse coaches, mentors, and I don't know, experts telling so many different views and perspectives on the same topic, right? So you have to be really strategic in terms of what of the feedback you listen. And then at the end of the day, as a team, you have to decide what's the best for you and for your business. Because indeed, opinions, I think, can be very conflicting at times, and it doesn't help the founders at all.
Yeah, exactly. And that was in our case something, there were always a conflict from each one had like a different opinion. And at one point we said, it's good. We had now enough opinions from from every angle. So we now pick out exactly what we think might be interesting for ourselves, and then just go with what we think might be the right way. And that's definitely what we decided to do now is, in our opinion, the way to go for the long run.
I think this is what afterwards turns you into a little bit more skilled founder, or what allows you to level up, because at the end of the day, you understand that you will always have a bunch of information out there. It's like Googling, it's the same thing. You just gotta figure out what you filter out and what pieces you take and implement and focus your time on and energy. Because if you try to focus on everything and implement everything, you will just very quickly lose yourself. So I guess that's part of the process of just leveling up as a founder, I would say.
Indeed. Great. Well, we're reaching the end of the podcast, but I still have one other question that I wanted to ask you. This question was left by my previous guest. They left this question without knowing who they are leaving it for. The question reads, on your journey as an entrepreneur, with what you have struggled the most and what has helped you overcome that struggle?
What we struggled the most, that's now a good point, because there were a lot of challenges we had until now. One big bottleneck we faced was that we split our focus too much on different tasks instead of just funneling everything in one direction and using this momentum to keep going instead of then shifting away from our focus.
Yeah, focus is very, very difficult, but crucial to have. Joao, do you have anything to add?
I can agree with that. I think the biggest point is definitely that, and that's why, if I can tie this again back to the beginning, that I think we could build StaysCo much faster where it is now than what we have done, is exactly related to what Alex said, I would say. Because now you would just know roughly how to focus on certain things and how to test things much faster. Especially for us, the biggest challenge was, I would say, that we can go everywhere at the same time if we want to, in terms of just trying to do it and justify it by using our tech. But that's not always the right thing to do. So the focus was the crucial thing to learn, I would say.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Alec and Joao. This was a pleasure to have this conversation. Thank you for coming on the Inside Story podcast to share your wealth of knowledge and experience from building StaysCo. I think my biggest takeaway from today's conversation is that building a startup is not an easy task, and the road ahead is pretty challenging, pretty demanding, and it takes a lot of effort, energy to be able to focus, to narrow, right? Know exactly what you want to build, make decisions when you are receiving conflicting inputs from the experts in the market. And at the end of the day, go back to your core and decide as a team what's the most important. And I think your experience have demonstrated how difficult it is to make those decisions, because that can be life and death decisions for your business. And I wish you the best of luck. I can't wait to hear exciting news about StaysCo expanding operations beyond Luxembourg. So thank you so much, Alec and Joao, for being today with us to share your experience.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for having us.